There's a lot of people frustrated with the current state of baseball. What do we make of it? We'll tell you in this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, we're on Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, co-hosting, and a little bit of producing as well. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Again, for my YouTube listeners, as you can tell, the backdrop is still not finished. Had some stuff get delayed, so hopefully by the time we have our next episode on Thursday, barring any signing or trade by the Royals, we should have everything put back up, but still pretty much a blank wall besides the wallpaper there. So if you're still wondering about that, hopefully by Thursday or Friday, we will have the entire setup put up behind me. But if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, this doesn't really apply to you, of course. I thought we would open up the show today talking a little bit about the current state of baseball. Usually, we're going to stick to Royals topics, but in fact, the first two episodes today are going to be more so league-wide. Really, when it comes down to it, I think the theme of this offseason has centered around the Dodgers, right? The LA Dodgers have been able to go out and pretty much get whoever they want. If it wasn't for the Mets giving Juan Soto the biggest deal in sports history, we could be talking about an even better super team right now in Los Angeles, though I do believe it probably came down to the Mets and the Yankees for Juan Soto. But the Dodgers, after winning the World Series, continue to reload. They signed Tanner Scott, all-star closer 2 days ago. They just signed Kirby Yates right before I went on and did this podcast, another all-star closer who was fantastic last year for the Rangers. So they're just using, every other deal this offseason to kind of rub it in the face of the team either that player was previously on or just to flex their muscles to the rest of the league that we've got this money to spend and we're not breaking any rules. And that's where we're going to start with this. As much as I would love to come on here and say the Dodgers are doing something terrible and somebody needs to keep them accountable or hold them in check, by the rule book, they're not doing anything wrong. They are doing, and their owner is doing, what you're supposed to do in baseball. Now, if you have unlimited resources, all more power to you, but you're trying to assemble the best possible team going into the season so you have the best chances to win a World Series. It doesn't matter if you won the previous year. You're going to try to continue to reload and get better, and that's what the Dodgers are doing. As much as it pains me to say, they're not doing anything wrong. Then I go to the players part of it, right? You could be mad at the players, and why are you signing with the Dodgers, right? Why did Blake Snell, become a sellout, right, and go to the Dodgers instead of going back to the Giants? Well, if you get the best deal, the best offer, and money is a big part of your decision, the Dodgers are going to be able to do that. So I can't fault the players and guys like Kirby Yates as well, who are 37 years old, or who is 37 years old, 38. He knows that his career is coming to an end. And what's the best chance to winning a World Series? Going to LA and playing with the Dodgers and, pitching for a lineup that features 3 MVP candidates in the first 4 spots, right? They are a loaded bunch. So on the surface, right, nothing illegal is happening here. Players are taking the best offer out there. I think I even saw with the Tanner Scott deal, like the Cubs, I believe it was, or the Blue Jays had made an offer. Maybe that was the Roki Sasaki deal where the Blue Jays had made an offer. the Dodgers have a really big bargaining chip when it comes to international players. They've got Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, right? So you have two megastars that played in Japan that could probably be just the best bargaining chip you need when trying to recruit international players. They want to play alongside those guys. They feel closer to home and having them as teammates. That's why I believe, you had somebody like Roki Sasaki entertain these other teams to maybe get a better offer. But in the end, we always knew it was going to be the Dodgers. Now, this brings me to the point of baseball as a whole, right? I've seen a lot of people out there say they need a salary cap, right? Or they need a salary floor. As much as I would like to say a salary cap is needed, which I think a salary cap is needed for the sport. Let me be very clear about that. It's also something I don't believe the Players Association will ever agree to. And we saw when there was that holdout, right? We can all remember the strike the players had. The owners and Players Association do not like each other whatsoever. They're not going to agree to a salary cap where some guys can't get the most possible money and maybe the best landing spot for them because there's that cap. And for the owners, I don't think they will ever agree to a salary floor where you have to spend a minimum each offseason that could make you more competitive with these other teams. I just don't see that being likely. That's why it's such a difficult situation to navigate here, because I don't believe there's a perfect solution. I've talked to a couple different people, just baseball fans in general, and I think I've gotten that sense that a salary cap is what everybody wants. But I think it's easier said than done. As much as I would like to say, the salary cap will save all of baseball, I want it to. Believe me, I hope there is a world in which that is put in place and you don't have off seasons like this where the Dodgers can pretty much just pick up whoever they want to because they have those unlimited resources. However, I don't see the Players Association coming to an agreement like that. I would be very surprised if they do. I'll hold out hope for it. I just would be very, very surprised. Now it brings me to my final point, because I did get a couple comments today saying, man, I hope the Dodgers win 120 games and they sweep their way to the World Series, go back to back, and, viewership is at an all-time low, and the fan base is outraged, players are outraged, owners are outraged, and it shakes everything up in the league. I do think something like that would maybe cause some action, right? If you have one team that wins 120, shatters the record, right? Surpasses that Mariners team that won 116, maybe it could shake things up. But I also bring up this point. I remember exactly 1 year ago today, I'm looking at the Dodgers, maybe not exactly 1 year, I'm being too specific there. Okay, roughly a year ago today, I was looking at the Dodgers lineup and I was looking at their rotation. Glass now is in the rotation. Yamamoto's in the rotation. Even Ohtani's not going to be pitching, but you add him to the lineup with Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. They looked unstoppable, right? Now, I think my projection for them came out to around 110. I thought they could win 110 games, even in a tough National League West, because you had the Padres there. Arizona was coming off a World Series appearance, but I had them around 110. And as loaded as that team was, as good as they were all season long, we never looked at the Dodgers and said that team might not make it. We knew they were going to win the division, right? Everybody knew they were going to win the division and likely be the 1 seed. But they didn't even get to 100 wins. I was way off on my projection. They won 98 games last year. Furthermore, they were a game away from elimination in the National League Divisional Series. Now, I know what you're probably saying right now, maybe under your breath, or you're saying this to somebody else while you're listening to this podcast. Well, why does it matter? They won the World Series, right? Why do those things matter when they went to the World Series and beat the crap out of the American League representative who was the juggernaut on that side of the New York Yankees? My point being that baseball is really difficult, as we all know, right? It is never a perfect science. You can have your models, you can have your projections. It does not mean that is going to work out, that you are going to have that accurate pick 9 out of 10 times. And for the Dodgers, I was sitting here in my room watching on YouTube TV that Padres and Dodgers Game 3 outcome. where the Padres went in, they're at home, they beat the Dodgers. I want to say they struck out Ohtani or Freeman to end the game, and the Padres were up 2-1. And I thought to myself, man, if they eliminate the Dodgers here in the NLDS, not only is it such a gut punch to LA, but it's also the Padres doing it, a team that was in your own division eliminating you. Now they stormed back, beat up the Padres pretty good, and never really looked back, right? They didn't really have that entertaining of a series against the Mets, and they dominated the Yankees, though it could have gotten close if the Yankees held on in Game 5. My point to that is they look like a super team on paper right now, but if you're one of those people that is hoping for them to win 120, 130 games, that's just not going to happen, not in the current state of baseball. And I also look at it this way. On the National League side, as good as the Dodgers are going to be, and they're my 1 seed pick, they're my favorite to get to the National or to the World Series, and represent the National League. The Braves are going to be back with Ronald Acuna. They are going to be an incredibly tough out. The Mets added Juan Soto to that lineup, and even though they're likely losing Pete Alonso, you got Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor and Mark Vientos. They just brought back Jesse Winker, though I'm not throwing him in the same conversation as those other guys, but that lineup still can do a lot of damage, right? Especially the top half of that lineup. You look at somebody like the Padres. I think they're another 90-plus win team, right? Arizona could be a team that bounces back a little bit in the National League West. So if they get to the postseason again as the 1 seed, we know they're going to get there. It's a matter if they're a 1 or a 2 seed. It's not going to be like a 4-game sweep or a 2-game sweep all the way to the World Series. I just don't think baseball's built like that anymore. And I also want to say this too. We've seen, ever since the Blake Snell signing for the Dodgers, every time the Dodgers sign somebody, it's, oh my gosh, it's like the Monstars are assembling. I still believe their core players are really the Monstars. Tanner Scott is an elite player. Kirby Yates is a great player. They're both fantastic back-end bullpen guys. They're also relievers, right? Relievers can get banged up. Even guys in the rotation. We saw last year, Tyler Glasnow get hurt. Yamamoto get hurt. Health is another part of this, which is why I don't think teams are going to win 120, 125 games, no matter how much talent you add, because it's really hard to do so. You're not always going to have your best every single day, right? And I think that we will eventually get another 110 to 115 win team, and it could be this Dodgers team, for all I know. Again, I'm just saying from last year, it looked like once you added Ohtani to that group, they were going to win 110 with ease, I might add. And they won 98. Still a really good season. It's not like you sit here and go, well, they only won a measly 98. They won a lot of baseball games, but it's still really hard to do. So if you're one of those fans going, man, it doesn't even matter if I tune in this year, we know the outcome, I wouldn't be so sure, because even though we're seeing in Kansas City right now for the Chiefs that, back-to-back Super Bowl winners, they're going for a three-peat. Like having a three-peat in baseball, in my opinion, would be the hardest thing to do because of how long the season is, how much has to go right, what draw you get in the postseason, how you play in the postseason. All of those things add up. Now, the Dodgers, they got it done last year. So you could be hearing my point and say, all this is stupid. The Dodgers won it. They're going to do it again. All I'm saying is that you can load up your team with a lot of talent. It doesn't mean it's all going to be hunky-dory and you're going to win 120 games. I could see the Dodgers winning over 100. I could also see them winning anywhere from 95 to 100 and having more competition in the National League West and more competition in the National League. But, yeah, I would say I'm hoping for a salary cap. I know people have asked me my opinion of this. I just don't know if I can see the Players Association agreeing to that. And hopefully before spring training rolls around, this surge by the Dodgers and grabbing everybody in free agency will spark some other teams to get up off their ass and start making some signings so not everybody ends up in LA when it's all said and done. Okay, we went a little bit long in the first segment. When we come back, let's talk about the big news of yesterday, which was Toronto finally getting a big-name free agent after swinging and missing at a lot before Santander. We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our first sponsor today in Rocket Money. And with Rocket Money, it's a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Go get started today over at Rocket Money. We're going to be continuing our league-wide talk here. In the news yesterday was Anthony Santander going to the Toronto Blue Jays on a 5-year, $92 million deal. And it's perfect timing, really, because on Friday, I remember the majority of our questions centered around Santander and this shorter-term deal he could be open to. And I rarely pump myself up. I rarely try to give myself credit because I just don't think that's a humble thing to do, and I don't really feel the need to bragging when it was a total guess what I did. Nobody was telling me that Anthony Santander was close to signing with the Blue Jays, but I just never got this sense that a 1 to 2 year deal was going to be in the cards. In fact, I said shorter term deal to me sounds like 3 to 4. Like he's just trying to get it down a little bit more, but still have a lot of money involved. And when it was all said and done, Anthony Santander got the exact type of deal that we all expected them to, right? There is some deferred money involved in that for Toronto. And by the way, my heart does go out to some Blue Jays fans that I do know this offseason has just been, really a grind for them up until that Santander deal. Because if you don't follow along on Twitter, you don't follow along on my page, you probably wouldn't know that the Blue Jays were interested in just about every single player that then went on to sign somewhere else. Or they were interested in trade talks with Garrett Crochet before the Red Sox traded from. They were interested in Roki Sasaki. The Dodgers went and got him. They were interested in Blake Snell, I believe. The Dodgers went and got him. I think they might have been interested in Willie Adames, and the Giants went and got him. Like, they just swung and missed on everybody. Now, I threw out a lot of names there. I can't even recall if they were interested on every single one of those guys. But they were interested, and it felt like everybody. And 100% of the time, that player signed elsewhere. That wasn't until Santander, who was obviously one of the biggest bats in free agency. He signed yesterday. The 30-year-old outfielder, great last year for Baltimore. Royals got, a taste of him in the wild card series. We're able to hold him in check for the most part. And I know that a lot of Royals fans thought the idea of Tony Taters in Kansas City would be a damn good one. And I thought it was a good fit. I thought that if the money worked out and the Royals were going to go a little bit over the payroll they'd kind of set for themselves for opening day 2025, the fit would have made sense. He's a corner outfield bat. He doesn't have great defense. He's really a DH and right fielder, and the Royals do value defense. They had one of, if not the best defense in all of baseball last year, and Santander would have brought that down a little bit. They also don't really seem to value great defense in the corner outfield spots because Hunter Renfroe wasn't very good defensively, and MJ Melendez, even though he improved a lot, was not that great overall defensively in 2024. But Santander is 30, as I just brought up, the 30-year-old outfielder. And I think a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal for $20 million to $25 million, that would have made sense for the Royals, right? Because you have somebody who is just known for the bat, really. He's got a lot of power, hit 44 bombs last year, drove in a lot of runs, was next to Gunnar Henderson, probably the most feared hitter in that lineup. On the top of my head, I'm trying to go back and think of every player. Colton Cowser certainly had his moments, but Santander and Gunnar Henderson were the heavy hitters in that lineup, right? But, he did hit 235. And as much as we see in baseball, those big power, driving a lot of runs, they got a lot of muscle. Those guys walk a lot. We see that so often. The 44 home run guy, the 50 home run guy, they walk a lot just because pitchers are going to try not to give them very hittable pitches. They're still going to get theirs. But I would say that for the most part, the 44 to 50 home run guys, they're going to have a good walk rate. Santander did not. Santander wasn't that great of a hitter for average and wasn't that much of an on-base guy either. And he is a switch hitter. That does make him more dangerous. That makes him more intriguing to a lot of teams out there. But I'll be quite honest that the 5-year deal north of $90 million, that's not one that I think will age very well by year 3 of that contract. I could always be wrong. As I brought up in the first segment today, baseball's not a perfect science. Who knows? Maybe Anthony Santander, wins a couple Silver Sluggers. He's a multiple-time All-Star in Toronto. He's a great hitter all the way into his age 35 season. His defense improves. We never know because baseball's not a perfect science. But Santander, to me, at that price for that many years for a 30-year-old who can't really play the field, I'm glad that the Royals never really entertained that. And who knows? Maybe they gave him a call. They wondered if that short-term deal could go 1 to 2 years, and they would be willing to give him more money per year, more money annually, than he'd be getting on the 5-year deal. But I think Santander kind of wanted that blanket of security, and it wouldn't surprise me if Santander kind of wraps up his career in Toronto. I mean, for the type of hitter he is, you can always age well and like Salvador Perez, still be a power hitter into your late 30s. But there's a chance that it just doesn't go that well. And by 2027, Santander is kind of a problem for Toronto's payroll. Very, very possible. And it's also why, in my opinion, this market has been so slow that we haven't seen the top hitters out there go and sign. We're still waiting on Alex Bregman. We're still waiting on Jurickson Profar. And hopefully, even though we've been upset and frustrated with the Dodgers getting everybody, hopefully that's going to, bust open the dam a little bit here. And so when the top guys are off the board, then we're going to see some of those cheaper, more affordable guys start becoming available, start talking to more teams. And maybe they are, it's just not going anywhere. But in my opinion, that's how the Royals are going to end up with somebody in free agency, whether it be a bullpen guy, it'd be a bench bat, or it'd be a middle of the order bat, is once all these top name guys are off the board. And I know it's going to upset a few Royals fans that are loyal listeners here on Locked On Royals, but they were just never going to be in on an Alex Bregman. Santander, I think, was the best fit, but at that price, you just got to know that that wasn't going to be a likely deal for the Royals. And I do think there has to have been a conversation about Jack Caglione and when he could come up to the show, right? When he could be an impact player for this lineup. And if Jack Caglione is viewed as somebody that can help them this year, late in the season, or early in 2026, it does not make sense to give Anthony Santander a 5-year deal. Because I do think that would block somebody like Jack Caglione. You would like to say, well, you can put Santander in right. Jack Caglione can be a left fielder. Vinny's at first base, or Vinny can DH and Jack Caglione can be first base. Yes, you could find a way to make that lineup work. You could find a way to fit all those pieces in there. But I also just don't think it's the way the Royals build their roster. I think it took a lot to go out there and get Jonathan India and then say, all right, either he or Massey's going to be moving somewhere. Because you just don't want to have a defense full of guys that are playing out of position. I know that's kind of putting the cart before the horse and we're looking ahead too much. But I do wonder if the Royals are looking at the middle of the order bat as somebody who could come in on a 1-year deal, somebody that just has 1 extra year of control, and you're not looking at somebody on a 4 or 5-year deal. I'll believe it when I see it. When the Royals give somebody a 5-year deal north of $90 million, then I can start believing that they're in play for guys like Santander. But for Toronto, I think it made a lot of sense. I think I named Toronto as one of those teams that would go out there and get him. I think I said Toronto and Detroit on Friday. Just so happened to be Toronto, and they finally hit on somebody. But now it's starting to become a little bit interesting to me about Detroit, because Detroit hasn't gone out there and gotten anybody for that lineup. And I feel like Bregman would be their best fit because of A.J. Hinch. We'll have to wait and see, though, until the offseason completely plays out leading up to spring training. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, I'm going to tell you why I believe Hunter Harvey does bounce back. We've speculated on it, but I've got some good data to back up why he should be able to bounce back. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our final sponsor and our title sponsor today in FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner for the NFL. And for my pick, I think it might be the safest bet of the weekend. Hopefully it doesn't come back to bite me. I'm taking the over on rushing yards for Saquon Barkley. I probably should put some money down on Jaden Daniels as well because he is just so fun to watch. But Saquon Barkley, to me, a little bit safer of a bet after 200-plus yards rushing against the Rams in that divisional round win. So he will be my FanDuel pick of the week. Finally, we're going to have some Royals talk here. I know we did talk a little bit about the Royals in each of the first two segments, but as I brought up at the beginning of the show, it was more so going to be league-wide. This one is just Royals-specific, and it's about a guy in the back end of their bullpen in Hunter Harvey. And on Friday, I think it was, there was a tweet out there that a couple of Royals accounts I follow. I think it was Jared Perkins, who does great work now over for Royals Review. We've had him on the show before about a year ago. But it was that the Royals in winter meetings had talked to the Mets about Starling Marte, and it was a deal involving Marte and Hunter Harvey. How much of that was truthful, if those were the only two players being discussed, I don't really know. And the fact that it was back at winter meetings and nothing was really said about it, nor has happened since then, I'm not sure we'll ever know. But I think there was a big reason as to why the Royals wouldn't accept a deal like that. Number one, Starling Marte is 36 years old, and his defense is terrible. Absolutely atrocious defense. Offensively, it would be an upgrade over what you got in Melendez last year and Hunter Renfroe. But overall, Starling Marte, I don't think, really boosts that lineup. But for a guy like Hunter Harvey, who struggled for the Royals last year, you may be asking yourself, why didn't they do a deal like that? If you're getting a slight upgrade in the outfield, especially the corner outfield spots, why are you not pulling a trigger on a guy who's only got one more year left with your team, and he wasn't good for you last year? Well, I think that the upside when looking at these two players and how they would benefit the Royals far more favors Hunter Harvey. Starling Marte, I think if Kansas City were to bring him in, and who knows, maybe it still happens, but if they were to bring him in, you're having really, really suspect defense. And I think that's being too kind. I just called it atrocious defense, so calling it suspect wouldn't really be doing it justice. You're getting really bad defense, whether it be in right field or left field. Worse than you got at the two spots last year. Offensively, I think you're getting a 240 hitter that can get on base at about 310. It might run into 10 to 13 home runs, drive in anywhere from 45 to 50. Might have an OPS plus or WRC plus right around the league average. I think that would help the lineup a little bit. It wouldn't do a lot to improve it. Hunter Harvey, if he does bounce back and returns to 2023 form, you're talking about a really good 1-2 punch in Harvey and Lucas Erceg for the 8th and the 9th inning, something the Royals just didn't have for the first half of the year, and it cost them a lot of games. But I did tease this before the break, that I think there's some data out there, and it's nothing too complicated. I'm not going to go overly analytical on you, but I think it's a very real reason why Hunter Harvey didn't work in Kansas City last year and wasn't healthy for longer than, a couple of outings. If you go over the course of Hunter Harvey's career, the first couple years, he didn't really appear in many games. The COVID years thrown in there, so that's a little bit weird. He was hurt in a couple of those years. So I kind of isolated it down to 2022, 2023, and 2024. It really comes down to the first half. And if you look at the splits per month for Hunter Harvey, he's really good in April and May. He takes a bit of a step back in June and July. He ramps it back up for August and September. So a great start to the finish, great end of the year. Middle is when he gets a little bit run down and he runs into some issues. It happens a lot with relievers. So that's point A. I believe that healthy, rested, a good spring training, a full spring training, Hunter Harvey's going to look good in March and April. It can be my hot take if you want. Number two, if you look back to last year, and I want to say I put this out in a tweet, but there was concern when Hunter Harvey was traded for that he just might have been overworked in Washington. And I thought to myself, well, he is throwing a lot of games for the Nationals. Kyle Finnegan, who's still out there in free agency, was their closer. But Hunter Harvey was throwing in pretty much every tight situation in the 8th inning. In fact, he threw 45 innings in the first half for Washington. He didn't even reach 10 innings for the Royals in the second half, then had the injury, never returned, and had a couple of setbacks along the way. So 45 innings in the first half. He had never done that in the first half before, whether it be due to injury, COVID year, or just workload. In fact, the most innings he ever threw in the first half was, I think, 2023, and it was 39. So not a ton less, but still 6 less outings. Now, you're talking about a big difference there when you're just a one-inning guy. 6 outings can be the difference in how you look in the second half. And Hunter Harvey was really, really good in the second half for Washington in 2023. And he was really good for Baltimore in 2022. He just only threw 39 innings, I think it was. It wasn't the same as what he threw last year, which you had the 45 innings, and then he threw a little bit with the Royals. I think he was quite honestly maxed out. And I think what's good about the Royals bullpen management is that they don't try to run guys into the ground. We saw that in the Mike Matheny era. Scott Barlow was out there for every single situation. The Royals, even if it looked like a great situation for Lucas Erceg, if he had thrown back-to-back days, he's not going back out there, right? They're going to go to somebody else. And so for Hunter Harvey, I think the way he can bounce back is the Royals using him as the number one setup guy, but also looking at the numbers in his career where they were the best. I think on 2 days rest is when his ERA was the lowest. How valuable is that to have a setup guy who can maybe throw on a Monday, then you can't have him again till Thursday or Friday? Not as valuable. That's more of a sixth inning guy, if you will, kind of what maybe Sam Long was like, where it's not every single time out. But now the Royals do have some more confidence in guys like Sam Long, in Angel Serpa, in John Schreiber. I think Hunter Harvey can be a back-end bullpen guy, but he shouldn't be the one that every single time it's a save situation, he's got the 8th, Erceg's got the 9th. I think if you really try to keep him healthy and keep him rested, you're going to get the best version of him. I mean, you got a triple-digit fastball with a 91 to 92 mile an hour split finger. That's devastating for the back end of the bullpen. And I think you just look back to 2023 and how the Nationals used him and compare it to 2024. I thought he was way overworked for a Nationals team that didn't end up going anywhere in terms of just postseason contention. And then when he got to the Royals, he was worn down. He got hurt, never appeared again. I think if he has a fully healthy spring training, you're going to see a closer version of the 2023 Hunter Harvey than the 2024. Okay, that'll do it for another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, find Locked On MLB as baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll be off tomorrow unless there's a signing by the Royals or trade for that matter. But until Thursday, when hopefully we've got our backdrop and our wallpaper all finished up, you take it easy, Kansas City.